All right, let's have our cricket conversation. The wisdom and experience of Robert Craddock, Wednesday night, Old Trafford. We're all in emotionally in this. What will Manchester bring us, Crash?
Well, I really do believe we'll see England go down swinging again. I think it's a ground they like and the ground they can attack at. The wicket from a distance to me looks a bit Gabber-esque. It's greenish as well. And I'm hoping that Jimmy Anderson gets a last test at his home ground because there's always this beautiful moment that with he's been playing for so long that one of the ends is named after him. And I love hearing, will you please welcome from the James Anderson end, James Anderson. It's just one of the great moments in sport, Gerard. But yeah, it's interesting. We're sort of expecting, there's been no leaks of the team, but there certainly hasn't been anything suggesting that Warner has been sacked from the team, David Warner. It's expected that Todd Murphy will play, and the Australians are expecting Warner to play the last two tests. Now, the supporting case for that is simply this, that he and Khawaja have had the worst of the conditions. They've managed 350 partnerships. Only two tests ago, he managed 66, and that the contrary case, of course, to say he should be gone, is that Stuart Broad completely sliced and diced him in the last test, but this will be a flatter wicket. And so it's an interesting one, Gerard, and I do get both sides, but whether Warner continues to exist beyond this tour and gets to his Sydney cricket ground farewell, Matthew Hayden said, I would support him for this tour. He's the opening batsman, let's stick with him. He said, but Sydney to Hayden looks a journey too far, a bridge too far. He said next season is a perfect time to butt a new player. So, it's all on the table at the moment.
How high a stakes call is this for the fourth test itself? I do think sort of for the relationship of the team with the public. So we're all in on this team and the emotional journey at the moment with one rider, as the majority of the nation thinks that it's preposterous that Warner continues to open. And from all the theories I've seen, would do anything to tip him out. So you'd want to be right, wouldn't you? You wouldn't want to lose the Ashes from here with Warner failing at the top.
Oh, yeah. It's a very, very fair and pertinent question you asked, Gerard. 100%. His credentials over the last couple of years, he's clearly a player in decline, up against his nemesis, who will come around the wicket and trying to get him nibbling outside off stump, and he's going to have to display hairline judgment to let the ball go and to be careful about the ones he plays at. It's absolutely on. And if David Warner edges out in the first 10 overs of the innings, it's a big story because it's a big gamble by the selectors. I do believe his contributions since arriving in England have been slightly bigger than what they look. It's hard in England, opening the batting there when you are on the wrong side of conditions. The World Test Championship and a couple of the early tests, it was heavy going. So I didn't think he did too badly, but it is a knife-edge call. It really is. I found I waver on it. Sometimes I feel that he is the right man for these last two tests, and other times you think, what would happen if you brought Mitchell Marsh up the order and said, just go for it, son, just go hard. If you bat for 25 minutes, beautiful, and make 28, happy days. You could do that, but I don't think they will. England is not the place where you do fancy experiments with opening batsmen. I don't think, Gerard. Yes. I don't think. That's not the way. You knew Andrew McDonald better than me, and he's not that sort of selector, is he? Your thoughts?
I'd be shocked if they tipped the team upside down and had a makeshift opener playing at Old Trafford. And I don't think they'll bring Harris in at this point.
So that's it. So
yeah, I think they picked their poison. That they are eyes wide open, and the stakes couldn't be higher. But I think to flinch and to lose. So if you tip a batting order in all sorts of different ways and open with Carey or Marsh or Green or Head, and it goes all right, then it looks like blind panic, to be honest. They're 2-1 up, and I think they will do well to remember that they're 2-1 up in the series.
Terrific point. You've just got to keep saying that 2-1 up. And, Gerard, the other thing is, and this is something no one ever mentions and people think it doesn't matter, but you're on tour together.
Yep.
Like, it's one thing if you drop a guy in Australia and he is not with the team. It's quite another thing if you've got the guy who you've just ended David Warner's career. That's it, mate. You are not playing. And he's sitting on the bus in the second row. He's in the dressing room in the corner. He's devastated. He's down. He's, half trying to be up for the others. And, like, there's small dressing rooms over there. Like, it's a lot of... It's just different to doing it in Australia. Now, I could almost hear people saying, oh, that's ridiculous. Your numbers are your numbers. But they've appointed him as opener for the series. He's not far away. They've had 3 50 opening partnerships. They haven't shaken the house down. He's known Khawaja since he was 8 years old. I think Khawaja wants him there, and that probably gets him over the line. However, it's all on Wednesday night. You are 100% right. If it's Stuart Broad, the assassin swoops again, well, the debate will be absolutely huge.
The rest of it, Crash, I don't know whether to ask you what would you do or what do you think they will do in terms of how the 11 is presented?
Yeah, if it's really overcast and rainy for 3 or 4 days and crazy thing, I would drop Todd Murphy and let Travis Head be the off spinner. Rain is forecast for every day, but it often is in England and sometimes it doesn't arrive. So if you're going to play Murphy, and I think they will, that is their preference, Gerard, 2 all-rounders is a luxury. It's just being a bit greedy.
Yep.
So you've got to make a choice between Marsh and Green. I would probably just lean towards Marsh. The only reason is because he's hot and he's free and he's just coming off a century. It's a different sort of pressure that will ride with him replacing Green after being selected ahead of him, not because Green's injured. And it's subtle pressure, but it's pressure. But I just think that's the way things can roll sometimes in the middle of a series. Remember, Khawaja scored 2 centuries in Sydney, replacing Travis Head, who had COVID, and Marcus Harris paid the price and hasn't been back since, has he?
No.
In Shane Warne once in the West Indies was having, we all knew Warney was a better bowler than Stuart McGill in 1999, but McGill was running reasonably hot and Warney was struggling. Warney was dropped. So, there's been a lot better. Most players are dropped in their careers. Very, very few aren't. I mean, I don't think Mark Taylor was, but you think if Bradman was dropped, Ponting was dropped 3 or 4 times, So it's not Cameron Green's good, but he's not great at the moment. But that could go either way. That could honestly. Your thoughts?
I think Marsh will play. Now, this is from a distance, isn't it? So I have a leaning, Crash, to Marsh and Hazelwood playing, and then in the other combination, Green and Nisa playing. So I want to keep the bowling as strong as possible with Hazelwood in for this. So I would play Marsh and Hazelwood here, and then I would probably replace them both for the Oval on the quick turnaround if there's a lot of overs bowled.
Yep.
And unless, of course, Marsh makes another 100. But I could definitely have Green and Nisa then as the combination.
Yes, we should not underestimate the impact of fresh minds. Have a look at the last test. Wokes, Wood, Marsh, Stark, all starred and all hadn't played the previous test. Like, they were fresh, they were ready to go. So there'll be changes for the last test, and you're right. It's just, there's something about Mitchell Marsh at the moment that he's in a headspace which I think we've been wanting him to see since he dominated the Under-19 World Cup, and he was going to be the boy to watch, and every time he got close he was injured. Like, he's had a long time out of the game with injuries to think about his technique and his mindset, and he used to be so nervous in the dressing room, and now I think he just might be able to do something a bit special, and to see him dropped after scoring a century, it has happened in Australian cricket. I remember Martin Love scored a century in his last test innings and never played again. So, but you'd like to see him get a chance, wouldn't you?
The iPhone forecast might be a little more optimistic than some, but it's got Wednesday no rain, Thursday no rain, Friday no rain, then Saturday, Sunday a 50% chance of rain on each day. I'd take that forecast over the others that I've seen.
Yeah, well, hopefully that's right. The one I looked at one which had more forecast of rain, so hopefully that's right. It's an interesting one because England have to come hard again, and they will. But I feel Australia's adjusting to the rhythms of baseball pretty well now. I think that their fields are getting a little bit better. When Stokes goes, he goes, doesn't you? And there's no game plan in the world that can stop him, really, when he's in that sort of mood. But even then, they've learnt things like bowling wide outside off stump, don't feed his leg side addiction. So, I think Australia can be pretty confident. It's very, very difficult to chase 2 victories in 2 tests to win the Ashes. That's England better get their skates on.
And this is a good ground for Australia, isn't it? The recent history there.
Oh, it is. And even this is the 30-year anniversary of Warnie's Ball of the Century, and at that same ground, and just it's. I always loved Test in Manchester for a really different reason, because a lot of the players had played league cricket in the north, and you'd go back to the bar at the Copthorne Hotel after stumps, doesn't happen much now, and it would be filled with the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, who used to play grade cricket, league cricket with the guys, and they're all amateurs, and it had this beautiful hearty feel, like Stephen and Mark Waugh, they stayed with one couple together, and they'd always appear. Mark got his tooth fixed, I think, by a local dentist, and he was there when he was in league cricket. Alan Border played, I think it was for Rishton, it might have been, and everyone, as soon as they get into the north of England, they feel this love of journeys past when they were nobody, and you were out playing league cricket and averaging 92, and then living the life. This is the charm of English cricket.
England last beat Australia at the ground in 1981. There are 7 test matches since. Australia's won 4 of them with 3 draws. Do you feel like Australia will secure the Ashes at Old Trafford?
Yeah, I do. I think you can feed off England's urgency. I really do. And, England, their baseball has left its imprint on this series. And I'm, in a way, as you said, having England win the last test, it's just given a poetic fortnight ahead, hasn't it? I mean, imagine if it was all over now, Gerard, and it's not. It's much like the women's series, just seeing England fire up in the middle, just it makes the victory almost more special. But it has been a good ground for Australia. They like the vibe of the city and the ground. It's generally a pretty good batting deck, and I think Australia can win. Australia's
wicketkeeper Alex Carey, so stayed quiet after Lords all the way through Headingley, speaks on the way to Old Trafford's crash. It's been a big conversation that I'm sure to some degree uncomfortably he's been at the centre of.
Yeah, it has. And look, we've all got different opinions on it, Gerard. I hope it doesn't happen again. I hope it's a one-off. It's certainly, I didn't love that style of dismissal, the sort of the gotcha, the moment, Totally legal, though. They had every right to do it. And he's right. They had talked about it at team meetings as far ago as 2015 about Johnny Bairstow wandering out of his crease. But I didn't think it was but I must say this. I'm staggered by the amount of ex-players who I thought would not approve of the dismissal, that didn't have a problem with it. Captains like Ricky Ponting said, yep, no problem with me. Mark Taylor, no problem. You were there watching Mark Taylor at first slip when he was captain of Australia. I just wouldn't have thought it would have been his sort of dismissal. But there you go, wrong again, Gerard.
So the Ashes retained. The overall fate of the mixed format series still to be determined. It was sort of like this got so tight between games and within games.
It did, and, it's funny though, Gerard, I reckon 3 times over the last 3 years I've said, and it appears the gap is closing between the pace-setting Australian cricket team and the rest of the world, but they just find a way. They just find a way to win. And, if it's not Elise Perry, or Elisa Healy, it's one of the new youngers like Annabelle Sutherland, or Alana King, and they just find a way, and it could have been down to the last game in Taunton in a couple of days' time. But I do love this format. The three formats all contributing to the Ashes, 20 overs, 50 overs, and the 5-day test. And I had reservations about whether it would be a good decision to run parallel to the men's Ashes. And initially, it was caught in the shadow, but it's burst into its own sunlight, and it's lovely. It was a terrific series, and I did enjoy seeing Alana King, the leg spinner, do well last night. A terrific story. Her parents came from Chennai, and she was a ball girl once at an Australian Open final in Melbourne in the tennis. How good a story, and played, like a lot of these girls, played 4 or 5 sports growing up, settled on cricket, and has done brilliantly.
It's 8 points to 6 with a game that carries 2 points to come. So I still feel like there's a lot left on that last ODI as to whether Australia wins the series or whether England's able to draw the series.
Yeah, and they've actually said that. They've tweeted that out saying, hey, yes, we have retained the Ashes. Now we want to win the series. And so there is plenty up for grabs. You're right.